The apple trees had turned to skeletal monuments of disappointment, their branches bare even in what should have been the height of spring. And Patrick Lawson knew with a certainty that settled like lead in his chest that this would be the year he finally lost everything. He stood at the edge of his orchard as the first pale light crept over the eastern hills, studying the gnarled trunks and lifeless limbs with the numb resignation of a man who had exhausted every prayer, every remedy, every desperate bargain with fate. 5 years. 5 years since the blight had come, creeping through his soil like poison, turning healthy wood to brittle death. 5 years since he had seen a single bloom on any of these 100 trees his grandfather had planted, that his father had tended, that he had sworn to preserve. The land assessor would come in 3 weeks. Patrick had received the letter yesterday, its official seal and formal language a polite death sentence. If the orchard showed no signs of recovery, the county would foreclose. His debt to the grain merchants, accumulated over 5 failed seasons, would be called. Everything would be sold at auction to settle accounts. He was 32 years old, and he would lose the only home he had ever known. Patrick turned away from the dead trees and walked back toward his farmhouse, a sturdy stone building that his great-grandfather had built with his own hands. Smoke rose from the chimney where he had left the morning fire burning. Inside, everything was neat and sparse, the home of a man who lived alone and had learned to need very little. He poured himself tea from the pot on the stove and sat at the wooden table, staring at nothing. The war had taken his parents. Border raiders, remnants of the old conflicts between human settlements and the Orc territories to the north, had swept through the valley when he was 17. His mother and father had hidden him in the root cellar, and he had survived by being a coward while they died defending land and home. Or so it felt, even 15 years later. He had tried everything to save the orchard. Different fertilizers, crop rotation in the spaces between the trees, burning sacrifices of grain to the old gods his grandmother had whispered about. He had consulted every traveling scholar and hedge witch who passed through the region. Nothing worked. The blight was magic, they said, or it was in the water, or it was divine punishment. No one actually knew, and no one could fix it. Patrick finished his tea and went out to begin his morning tasks. The chickens needed feeding, the vegetable garden required weeding, and he had fences to mend on the southern boundary. Work was what kept him sane, kept him from simply walking into the forest and never coming back. He was scattering grain for the chickens when he saw her. She stood at the far end of the orchard, where the access road met his property line, perfectly still in the dawn light. Even at this distance, there was no mistaking what she was. Green skin, the unmistakable powerful build of Orc kind, wearing simple traveling clothes and carrying a large pack on her back. She was looking at his trees. Patrick's hand went instinctively to the knife at his belt. Orcs this far south were rare and rarely brought good news. The war had officially ended 12 years ago, but tensions remained high. Most humans still viewed orcs as monsters, and most orcs viewed humans as genocidal invaders. The few orcs who did trade or work in human territories kept to the cities, where martial law at least pretended to offer protection. A lone orc woman on his property at dawn could mean trouble, but she was not approaching the house. She was simply standing there, her attention entirely on the orchard. As Patrick watched, she took a slow step forward, then another, walking along the first row of dead apple trees. Her movements were careful, almost reverent. He should tell her to leave. He should probably ride to the village and report an orc sighting to the territorial militia. But something about her posture, the way she moved through his dying orchard, stopped him. Patrick left the chicken yard and walked toward her, keeping his hand near his knife but not drawing it. As he got closer, he could make out more details. She was tall, probably close to 6.5 feet, with the broad shoulders and muscled frame typical of orc women. Her skin was a deep forest green, her black hair pulled back in a practical braid. Small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, and her ears came to pronounced points. She looked to be in her mid-20s. She heard him approaching and turned, her amber eyes meeting his with a directness that made him pause. "This is private property," Patrick said, keeping his voice level. "You are trespassing." The orc woman studied him for a long moment, then looked back at the trees. "Your orchard is dying," she said. Her voice was deep, melodious, with the slight guttural accent common to orc speech. "Not dead, dying." "I am aware," Patrick replied. "That does not answer my question. What are you doing here?" She knelt beside one of the trees, pressing her palm against the rough bark, her eyes closed. 5 years. Patrick felt a chill run down his spine. "How did you know that?" the wood remembers. "The roots still live deep down, but they cannot reach what they need. Something blocks them." She opened her eyes and looked up at him. "You are the keeper of this orchard." "I am the owner, yes. Patrick Lawson." "I am Grelka," she said, standing to her full height. "I am a rootsinger. I feel the pain of growing things. I have felt your orchard's pain for 3 days of walking, getting stronger as I came south. I had to find the source." Patrick stared at her. "A rootsinger? I thought that was orc superstition." Something flickered in Grelka's expression, a flash of what might have been anger or hurt. "Many things humans call superstition are real. Many things orcs know. Humans have forgotten or never learned. Your orchard is dying because something corrupts the deep earth. I can feel it, but I cannot name it from the surface. Are you telling me you can save these trees? I am telling you I might be able to find what kills them. Whether they can be saved depends on what I find." She looked at him steadily. "I would need time. Days, perhaps a week. I would need to walk among the trees, to listen to the roots, to search the soil. And I would need your permission to do this." Patrick's mind raced. This could be some kind of trick, though he could not imagine what an orc woman would want with his failing orchard. It could be genuine, though the idea of orc magic saving his family's land seemed absurd. But what did he have to lose? In 3 weeks, the assessor would come and everything would be over anyway. "Why would you help me?" he asked. "Humans and orcs are not exactly friends." Grelka looked out over the rows of skeletal trees. "Because growing things should not suffer if they can be healed. Because I am rootsinger and this is what I do. Because I have nowhere else I must be." She met his eyes again. "And because you have not yet ordered me off your land at sword point or run to fetch the militia, which means you are perhaps not like most humans I have encountered." There was a weight to her words, a history of pain that Patrick recognized. He thought about his own isolation, his own sense of being abandoned by the world. "You can stay," he said. "For a week. I have a barn you can sleep in and I will provide meals. In exchange, you will try to find what is killing my orchard." "Agreed." "Agreed," Grelka said, and something in her expression softened slightly. Patrick led her back toward the farmhouse, acutely aware of her presence behind him. She moved with surprising quiet for someone so large, her footfalls barely audible on the grass. He showed her to the barn, which was clean and well-maintained, with fresh straw in the loft and space for her pack. "I will bring you breakfast in an hour," he said. "Do you eat meat?" "I eat anything," Grelka replied, setting her pack down carefully. "But I do not require special food." "Whatever you eat is sufficient." Patrick nodded and returned to the house, his mind churning with questions and doubts. He prepared breakfast mechanically, frying eggs and bacon, toasting bread, trying to process what had just happened. An orc woman was staying in his barn. An orc woman who claimed she could sense the health of plants through some kind of magic. An orc woman who might be his last desperate hope for saving his home. He loaded 2 plates with food and brought them outside. Grelka had emerged from the barn and was standing in the orchard again, her hand pressed against a different tree. She looked up when he approached and came to meet him, taking the offered plate with a nod of thanks. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Patrick watched her from the corner of his eye, noting the way she moved, the expressiveness of her features despite the tusks and the strangeness of her appearance. She caught him looking and raised an eyebrow. "You have questions," she said. It was not really a question. "Many," Patrick admitted. "But I suppose the most important one is how you became a rootsinger. Is it common among your people?" Grelka swallowed a bite of bread before answering. "Not common, no. Perhaps 1 in every 1,000 orcs is born with the gift. We hear the songs of growing things, feel their joy and pain. In orc clans, rootsingers are valued. We find the best places to plant, we heal sick forests, we know when drought or plague approaches by listening to the whispers in root and stem." "That sounds useful," Patrick said carefully. "Why would you leave your clan to wander human lands?" Her expression closed off slightly. "That is a longer story, and one I am not certain I wish to share with a stranger. Sufficient to say that I left and I travel now where my gift leads me. Your orchard called to me," I answered. Patrick nodded, recognizing the boundaries she was setting. "Fair enough. What will you need from me while you work?" "Only that you do not interfere. I will walk the rows, I will place my hands on the earth, I will listen. To others it may look like I am doing nothing, but I will be searching, deeper than eyes can see." "I understand," Patrick said, though he was not sure he did. "There is a well by the house for water. Help yourself to anything you need. I will be working in the southern fields if you require me." Grelka nodded, finishing her breakfast. She handed him back the plate and without further words walked back into the orchard. Patrick watched her go, then shook his head and turned to his own work. Whatever happened, at least something was happening. After 5 years of helpless watching, even this strange development felt like progress. The day passed in a strange rhythm. Patrick worked on mending fences, periodically glancing toward the orchard where he could see Grelka moving slowly through the rows. She would stop at seemingly random trees, kneeling to press her palms against the soil, or standing with her hands on the trunk for long minutes. Sometimes her eyes closed and her lips moved, though he could not hear what she said. By afternoon, curiosity got the better of him. Patrick brought water to the orchard and found Grelka sitting cross-legged beneath one of the larger apple trees, her hands buried in the earth up to her wrists. She did not open her eyes when he approached. "I can feel you hovering," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "If you have questions, ask them, but quietly." Patrick sat down a few feet away, setting the water jug within her reach. "What are you feeling right now?" "Pain," Grelka said softly. "Old pain, like an infected wound that never healed. These trees are strong, stronger than they appear. They want to live, to bloom, to bear fruit. But something in the deep earth sickens them, drains their strength before it can reach the branches." She was quiet for a moment. "There is also great love here. These trees were tended by someone who cared deeply for them." "My grandfather," Patrick said. "He planted most of these when he was young. He said an orchard was a promise to the future, that you plant not for yourself but for your children and grandchildren." "He was wise," Grelka said. She opened her eyes and slowly withdrew her hands from the soil. "The corruption is deeper than I expected. It will take time to trace it to its source. But you can do it. I do not know, but I will try." She reached for the water jug and drank deeply. "Tell me about the land before the blight. Was there anything unusual?" "Any changes in the water, the weather, the wildlife?" Patrick thought back. forcing himself to remember that last good year. Nothing obvious. It was a normal spring, good rainfall, warm days. The trees bloomed beautifully. Then in summer the first signs appeared. Leaves yellowing early, fruit dropping before it ripened. By autumn, nothing would grow in the orchard at all. We thought it was a bad season, that it would pass. But the next spring there were no blossoms, and there have been none since. And the land around the orchard, does anything grow there? Yes, my vegetable garden is productive. The fields where I plant grain have normal yields. It is only the orchard that is affected. Grelka frowned, her brow furrowing. That is strange. Typically, a blight in the soil spreads. If it is contained to only this space, it suggests something specific to these trees, or something beneath them. Beneath them, Patrick echoed. Old magic sometimes seeps up from deep places, or old hatred. The land remembers what happens upon it, and sometimes that memory becomes a curse. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. I will continue my search, but I may need to go deeper. What does that mean? It means I may need to enter a trance to send my consciousness down into the root ways. It is not without risk, but it may be necessary. She looked at him seriously. If I do this, I will need you to watch over my body. I will be vulnerable, unable to wake or defend myself. Do you understand? Patrick met her amber gaze and nodded slowly. I understand, and I will keep you safe if it comes to that. Something in Grelka's expression softened again, that same subtle shift he had seen earlier. You are strange for a human. Most would not trust an orc, would not welcome one onto their land, would not promise protection. Most humans have not spent 5 years watching their family legacy die while being powerless to stop it, Patrick replied. You offer hope, even if it is a small hope. That is worth any risk. Grelka studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I will continue my work. Thank you for the water. She returned to her methodical search, and Patrick went back to his tasks, though his mind remained on her words. Old magic, old hatred. What could lie beneath his grandfather's orchard that would carry such poison? That evening, Patrick prepared a simple dinner of stew and bread. He brought a bowl to the barn, where Grelka was settling into the loft. She accepted the food gratefully, and they ate together in comfortable silence. The spring evening was cool, and Patrick found himself reluctant to leave the warm barn and return to his empty house. May I ask you something? Grelka said, breaking the quiet. Of course. Why do you live alone? You are young, healthy. Where is your family? Patrick set down his bowl. Dead. The war took my parents 15 years ago. I never married, never had children. The orchard consumed all my time and attention, and then the blight came, and after that, well, there seemed no point in bringing someone else into this failing enterprise. That is lonely, Grelka said quietly. Yes, Patrick agreed. It is. What about you? You said you left your clan. Do you have family? Grelka was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. I had a clan. I had a mother, 2 sisters, many cousins, but when you are rootsinger, you are different. Special, yes, but also apart. You hear songs others cannot hear. You feel pains others do not feel. It makes you strange. She paused. And when you tell your clan that the war they wish to continue is killing the forest, when you say that the land cries out for peace, they do not always wish to hear it. They exiled you, Patrick said softly. I left before they could make it formal. Better to choose exile than to have it forced upon you. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. So I travel and I help where I can and I listen to the growing things. It is enough. Patrick heard the lie in those last words, the same lie he told himself every night when he went to sleep alone in his empty house. It is enough. It has to be enough. Because what else is there? I am sorry, he said. For what it is worth, I am glad you came here. Whatever happens with the orchard, it is good to have someone else here, even for a little while. Grelka looked at him with those intense amber eyes, and he saw his own loneliness reflected back at him. "Yes," she said quietly, "it is good." Patrick left her to her rest and returned to the house, but sleep was long in coming. He lay in his bed, listening to the night sounds, thinking about the strange orc woman in his barn and the impossible hope she represented. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Patrick worked his other fields and tended his animals, while Grelka continued her methodical exploration of the orchard. Sometimes he would bring her water or food and they would talk briefly. Conversations that ranged from agricultural techniques to childhood memories to the nature of magic. Patrick found himself looking forward to these moments, to the sound of her voice and the directness of her gaze. On the 4th morning, Patrick woke to find Grelka already in the orchard, standing at the very center where the oldest tree grew. She had drawn a circle in the dirt around the tree and was kneeling at its base, her hands pressed flat against the ground. Patrick approached quietly. "Grelka," she did not look up. "I have found something, not the source not yet, but the path to it. There is a deep root, old and strong, that reaches far down into the earth, farther than natural. I need to follow it." "The trance you mentioned," Patrick said. "Yes, I must do it now before I lose the thread." She finally looked up at him. "I need you to stay with me. If I am in the trance for more than a day, if I do not wake by sunset tomorrow, you must pull me back. Press your hands to mine and call my name. Do you understand?" "I understand," Patrick said, though his heart was racing. "Is it really that dangerous?" "The deep earth is not meant for mortal minds, even those of us with the gift. I could become lost, but it is necessary." She settled herself more comfortably, crossing her legs and resting her hands palms down on the exposed roots of the old tree. "Stay close. Watch over me." "I trust you, Patrick Lawson." Those last words hit him with unexpected force. When was the last time anyone had said they trusted him? When had he last trusted anyone? "I will keep you safe," he promised. Grelka closed her eyes. Her breathing deepened, slowed. The air around her seemed to thicken, to hum with a frequency just below hearing. Patrick watched as her body went utterly still, so still that for a moment he feared she had stopped breathing entirely. But no, there was the gentle rise and fall of her chest, just very slow, very measured. She was gone, her consciousness traveling down into the earth along the pathways only she could perceive. Patrick sat down beside her, settling in for a long wait. He had brought water, food, and a blanket. The day was warm, but the night would be cold, and he would not leave her alone. The hours passed slowly. Patrick watched the sun arc across the sky, watched the shadows lengthen and shift. He talked to Grelka's unresponsive form occasionally, telling her about the orchard in its glory days, about his grandfather's stories, about his own hopes and fears. It felt strange to confess such things to someone who could not hear him, but also liberating. Perhaps that was why he could say these things at all. As evening approached, Patrick built a small fire near the tree, careful to keep it contained. He ate some bread and cheese, drank water, and settled in for the night. Grelka had not moved, had not given any sign that she was aware of the world around her. Her face was serene, almost peaceful, but Patrick found himself checking constantly to make sure she was still breathing. Night fell. Stars appeared in a vast sweep across the sky. Patrick fed the fire and wrapped the blanket around his shoulders, his back against the old apple tree, Grelka's still form visible in the flickering light. He had not spent a night outside since he was a child, and he had forgotten how alive the darkness could be. Owls called, small animals rustled in the grass, the wind whispered through the dead branches above. He must have dozed. because he woke suddenly to find the sky beginning to pale with approaching dawn. Grelka was still motionless beside him. Patrick stretched his stiff muscles and checked on her again, pressing his fingers to her neck to feel the slow, steady pulse. Still alive, still breathing, still somewhere deep in the earth. The sun rose. Patrick ate a cold breakfast and resumed his watch. He found himself studying Grelka's face, the strong lines of her jaw, the sweep of her cheekbones, the way her tusks curved gracefully from her lower lip. She was beautiful, he realized. Not in the way human women were beautiful, but in her own way. Powerful and strange and striking. When had he started thinking of her as anything other than an orc, other than a means to save his orchard? Midday came and went. Patrick was beginning to worry in earnest. She had been in the trance for nearly a full day. How much longer could she survive like this? He leaned closer, speaking directly into her ear. "Grelka, I do not know if you can hear me, but you need to come back soon. Whatever you are searching for down there, you have been gone too long. Come back, please." No response. Patrick sat back, anxiety gnawing at him. The afternoon dragged on. Patrick decided he would wait until sunset as she had instructed, and if she had not woken by then, he would try to pull her back. The thought terrified him. What if he did it wrong? What if he hurt her, or failed to reach her, or brought her back damaged somehow? But he had promised to keep her safe, and he would keep that promise. The sun was touching the western hills when Grelka gasped. Patrick lunged forward, gripping her shoulders as her eyes flew open, wide and unfocused. She drew in great shuddering breaths, her whole body trembling. For a moment she did not seem to see him, her gaze fixed on something far away or deep within. "Grelka," Patrick said urgently. "Grelka, you are back, you are safe. Look at me." Slowly, her eyes focused on his face. Recognition dawned, and she sagged forward against him, her weight suddenly heavy in his arms. Patrick held her, supporting her as the tremors gradually subsided. "I found it," she whispered hoarsely. "I found the source." "What is it?" Patrick asked. "What is killing the orchard?" Grelka pulled back slightly, though she still leaned on him for support. Her face was drawn, exhausted, but her eyes burned with intensity. Blood. Old blood soaked deep into the earth. Violence and hatred crystallized over years into poison. There was a battle here long ago. Many died, and their deaths were cruel. The land remembers. The trees remember, and the memory is killing them. Patrick felt his blood run cold. A battle, here on his family's land. How long ago? Decades. Perhaps a century or more. But the hatred was so strong that it persists, deeper than the roots can avoid. Every spring, when the trees try to bloom, they draw up that poisoned memory along with the water, and it kills the new growth. "Can it be healed?" Patrick asked desperately. "If we know what it is, can we fix it?" Grelka met his eyes. "Yes, but it will not be easy. The land must be cleansed, the old hatred laid to rest. It will require ritual, sacrifice, and time, and it will require both of us." "Tell me what to do," Patrick said. "Whatever it takes." Grelka nodded slowly, then tried to stand. Her legs buckled, and Patrick caught her, lifting her in his arms. She was heavy with muscle and bone, but he was strong from years of farm work. He carried her out of the orchard toward the house. "The barn," Grelka protested weakly. "I should go to the barn." "No," Patrick said firmly. "You nearly killed yourself trying to save my orchard. You are coming inside. You are lying in a real bed, and you are going to rest properly." He expected her to argue, but she simply nodded and rested her head against his shoulder. The gesture felt intimate, trusting, and Patrick's heart beat faster as he carried her into his house. He settled her on his own bed, the only bed in the house, and brought her water. She drank greedily, then lay back against the pillows with a sigh. "I need to sleep," she said. "The deep searching takes everything. I will wake in a few hours and then we can talk about what must be done. Sleep, Patrick said. I will be here when you wake. Grelka's eyes were already closing. Within moments, her breathing had deepened into genuine sleep. Patrick watched her for a moment, then quietly left the room, pulling the door mostly closed. He went to the kitchen and made himself tea, his hands shaking slightly with delayed reaction. She had found the answer. After 5 years of helpless despair, he finally knew what was killing his orchard. Old blood, old hatred. A battle fought and forgotten by everyone except the land itself, and Grelka said it could be healed. Patrick allowed himself a moment of wild hope before reality reasserted itself. The assessor would come in less than 2 weeks. Even if they could perform the ritual Grelka spoke of, even if they could cleanse the land, would the trees recover in time? Could anything bloom after being dormant for 5 years? He did not know. But for the first time in a very long time, he felt something other than despair. He felt possibility. Grelka slept through the afternoon and into the evening. Patrick checked on her periodically, reassured by the steady rise and fall of her breathing. He prepared soup, keeping it warm on the stove for when she woke. As the last light faded from the sky, he settled into a chair in the main room with a book, though he found it impossible to concentrate on the words. He must have dozed off, because he woke to find Grelka standing in the doorway, wrapped in one of his blankets. She looked better, less pale and drawn, though still tired. "You should have woken me," she said. "You should have taken your own bed." Patrick stood, stretching his stiff neck. "You needed it more than I did. Are you hungry? I made soup." "Starving," Grelka admitted. They sat together at the kitchen table, and Patrick watched her eat with the single-minded focus of someone truly depleted. When she had finished 2 bowls, she sat back with a satisfied sigh. "Better," she said. "Much better, thank you." "You said the orchard could be healed," Patrick said, unable to hold back the question any longer. "How?" Grelka folded her hands on the table. "The poison in the earth is old hatred, the crystallized essence of violence and pain. To cleanse it, we must offer the opposite: peace, growth, life. We must give the land something good to remember instead of the old evil." "What does that mean, practically speaking?" Patrick asked. "We must perform a rootsinger ritual, one that goes deeper than any I have attempted before. We will need to gather living water from a source that has never known violence. We will need seeds of good growth, plants that represent life and renewal. And we will need blood." Patrick tensed. "Blood, not death blood," Grelka said quickly. "Life blood freely given. A few drops from each of us, mixed with the living water and offered to the earth with intention and song. Our blood will carry our will, our hope for healing. It will dilute and eventually replace the old blood's poison. And you think this will work?" "I have never attempted a cleansing of this magnitude," Grelka admitted. "But the principles are sound. If we perform the ritual correctly, if our intention is pure and our offering sufficient, the land will respond. The trees will remember that good things can also happen in this space. They will reach for that memory instead of the old pain." Patrick nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Help gathering the materials, and your participation in the ritual itself. You are the keeper of this land, the last of your bloodline that has tended it. Your will matters, your voice matters. The ritual will be stronger with both of us." "Then you have it," Patrick said. "Whatever you need, I will help." Grelka smiled, a genuine warm expression that transformed her face. "Then we begin tomorrow. We have much to do and little time." That night, Patrick made a bed for himself on the floor of the main room and insisted Grelka keep his room. She protested, but he was firm, and eventually she relented. As Patrick lay on his makeshift bed, staring at the dark ceiling, he found himself thinking not about the orchard or the ritual, but about the orc woman sleeping in his room. About her courage in facing the deep earth alone, her kindness in trying to help a stranger, her quiet loneliness that matched his own. He was beginning to care for her, he realized, not just as a solution to his problems, but as a person, as Grelka. The realization should have frightened him. She was orc, he was human. Their peoples had been at war within living memory. Any relationship between them would be forbidden, condemned, dangerous for them both. But lying there in the dark, Patrick found he did not care about any of that. Grelka had come to him when he needed help. She had risked herself for his dying orchard. She had trusted him, and he was beginning to understand that he trusted her as well, in a way he had not trusted anyone in years. The next morning, they began their preparations. Grelka explained that they needed to find a spring or stream that had never been used for washing, had never seen blood spilled into it, had never been touched by anger or violence. Patrick knew of a place, a tiny spring that bubbled up in the deep forest several miles north, too remote and small to be of practical use for anything. They walked together into the forest, following deer paths and animal trails. Grelka moved through the woods with easy confidence, occasionally pausing to press her hand against a tree or kneel to examine some plant. Patrick found himself watching her, admiring the way she moved, the way she seemed to belong so completely to the wild spaces. "You are staring," Grelka said without looking at him, amusement in her voice. "Sorry," Patrick said, flushing. "I have just never met anyone like you, a rootsinger or an orc. Both, either. You." He hesitated, then added, "I am glad you came to my orchard." Grelka glanced at him, something soft in her expression. "I am glad I came as well." They found the spring as afternoon approached, a clear trickle of water emerging from between moss-covered stones. Grelka knelt beside it, closing her eyes and placing her hands in the water. After a moment, she nodded. "This is good, clean. The water here knows only peace." She produced a clay bottle from her pack and carefully filled it, stoppered it, and sealed the cork with wax. The first component. On the walk back, they gathered other materials. Seeds from wildflowers that grew in the forest clearings, moss from stones near the spring, a young sapling from a tree that had sprouted in the rich soil near a decaying log. Grelka explained that each represented different aspects of growth and renewal, different songs the earth could remember instead of old violence. They returned to the farmhouse as the sun was setting. Grelka spread out their gathered materials on the kitchen table, examining each one and arranging them in a pattern Patrick did not understand, but that clearly had meaning to her. "We will perform the ritual tomorrow at dawn," she said. "I will prepare through the night, singing the opening songs, calling the attention of the deep earth. When the sun rises, we will walk the orchard together and make our offerings, and we will give our blood to the land, freely and with hope." Patrick felt a flutter of nervousness. "Have you done anything like this before?" "Smaller versions, yes. I have healed sick groves, cleansed places where minor darkness took root, but never anything of this scale, never trying to undo a century of hatred." She looked at him seriously. "I cannot promise it will work, Patrick. I can only promise I will give everything I have to the attempt." "That is all I can ask," Patrick said. "That is more than I had any right to hope for." They ate a quiet dinner together, the weight of tomorrow's work hanging between them. Afterward, Grelka returned to the bedroom to begin her preparations, and Patrick could hear her voice through the door, singing in the deep, rhythmic language of orc ritual. The sound was beautiful and strange, making the hair on his arms stand up. He tried to sleep, but found it impossible. Instead, he sat at the window, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to Grelka's song. He thought about his grandfather planting these trees, about his father teaching him to prune and graft, about his mother's apple pies that had been the pride of the valley. He thought about all he stood to lose and all he had already lost, and he thought about Grelka, this strange, fierce woman who had walked into his life 4 days ago and turned everything upside down. Somewhere in the darkest hours of the night, her singing stopped. The house fell silent. Patrick finally slept, slumped in his chair, dreaming of apple blossoms and green skin and amber eyes. He woke to Grelka shaking his shoulder gently. "Dawn comes soon," she said softly. "It is time." Patrick stood, his muscles protesting after the awkward night in the chair. Grelka looked tired but focused, her face painted with intricate patterns in white clay, her hair unbound and flowing over her shoulders. She wore simple robes instead of her traveling clothes, and she carried a leather satchel with their gathered materials. "Are you ready?" she asked. Patrick nodded. "As ready as I can be." They walked out to the orchard as the sky began to pale. Grelka led him to the oldest tree at the center and had him kneel facing her. She produced a small, sharp knife and the bottle of living water. "I will guide you through the ritual," she said. "Listen to my words and repeat them as best you can. The language is Old Orc, but the earth will understand your intention even if your pronunciation is imperfect. When I give you the knife, you will make a small cut on your palm, just enough to draw a few drops of blood. Let it fall into the water." "Do you understand?" "I understand." Grelka began to sing, her voice starting low and gradually building in volume and intensity. The words were incomprehensible to Patrick, but they seemed to resonate in his chest, to vibrate in his bones. She sang of deep roots and clean water, of new growth and healing earth. She sang of the end of old pain and the beginning of new life. Then she gestured to Patrick, speaking a phrase slowly, waiting for him to repeat it. He did his best, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds. Grelka nodded encouragingly and continued, teaching him line by line a song about peace and renewal. As the sun broke over the eastern hills, flooding the orchard with golden light, Grelka unstoppered the bottle of living water and poured a measure into a wooden bowl. She took the knife, pressed it to her palm and drew it across in one quick motion. Blood welled, bright against her green skin, and she let several drops fall into the water. Then she handed the knife to Patrick. He met her eyes, saw the trust and hope there, and pressed the blade to his own palm. The cut stung, but he barely noticed. He watched his blood drip into the bowl, red mixing with red, swirling in the clear water. Grelka began to sing again, this time in a language Patrick understood. "We offer life for life, blood for blood. We offer clean water to wash away old pain. We offer new seeds to replace old death. Hear us, deep earth. Remember our offering. Remember peace." She took the bowl and together they stood, walking slowly through the orchard. At each tree, Grelka poured a small measure of the blood-mixed water onto the roots, singing as she did. Patrick walked beside her, repeating her words, feeling something shift in the air around them, something fundamental and deep. They walked every row, stopping at every tree. The sun climbed higher. The water in the bowl never seemed to diminish, no matter how much Grelka poured out. Patrick's hand throbbed from the cut, but he ignored it, focused entirely on the ritual, on his intention to heal this land. When they reached the final tree, Grelka poured out the last of the water and set down the bowl. She produced the seeds and moss and pieces of the sapling they had gathered, placing them carefully on the ground at the tree's base. Then she knelt and pressed her bleeding palm flat against the earth, gesturing for Patrick to do the same. The moment his hand touched the soil, Patrick felt it. A pulse, like a heartbeat, like the earth itself was breathing. It ran up his arm through his chest, settling somewhere deep in his core. He gasped, looking at Grelka, and saw the same recognition in her eyes. She began to sing one final verse, and Patrick understood that this was the moment, the culmination of everything. He joined his voice to hers, rough and untrained but full of desperate hope. They sang of forgiveness, of release, of letting go of old hatred. They sang to the blood in the soil, asking it to rest, to be done with its pain. They sang to the trees, asking them to accept healing, to reach once more for life and light. The sun reached its zenith. The orchard was flooded with noon light. And Patrick felt something break, deep below them, like a chain snapping, like a dam giving way. The pulse beneath his hand intensified, racing through the ground, spreading out through the orchard in waves. Grelka cried out, her voice triumphant, and then collapsed backward, exhausted. Patrick caught her, and they sat together on the ground, bleeding hands pressed to the earth, breathing hard. "Did it work?" Patrick asked hoarsely. "Grelka, did it work?" She was staring up at the tree above them, and Patrick followed her gaze. There, on a branch that had been dead and bare for 5 years, was a single bud. Tight and closed, but unmistakably green, unmistakably alive. "Look," Grelka whispered, pointing. Patrick looked around the orchard and felt his breath catch. On tree after tree, buds were forming, swelling, appearing as if by magic along branches that had been skeletal moments before. The entire orchard was coming back to life before their eyes. "It worked," Patrick said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Grelka, it worked. You saved them." "We saved them," Grelka corrected softly. "Your blood, your will, your land. I only showed you the way." Patrick looked at her, this incredible woman who had appeared in his orchard less than a week ago, who had risked everything to help him, who had given him back his hope and his home. And before he could think better of it, before he could second guess or doubt or fear, he leaned forward and kissed her. Grelka went very still for a moment, then kissed him back, her lips warm against his, her hand coming up to cup his face. The kiss was gentle, tentative, tasting of salt and earth and hope. When they pulled apart, Grelka's eyes were wide, her expression stunned. "Patrick, you should not, we cannot, your people and mine." "I do not care," Patrick said fiercely. "I do not care what anyone thinks. You saved my life, Grelka. You gave me back my future. And somewhere in the last week, you became the most important person in my world. I know it is fast. I know it is impossible, but I cannot help how I feel." Grelka stared at him, emotions warring across her face. "You do not understand what you are saying. If your neighbors discover you harbor an orc, if the militia learns there is an orc woman here, there will be consequences. For you, perhaps prison or worse. For me, death." "Then they will not discover it," Patrick said. "Grelka, you said you had nowhere else to go. Stay here. Stay with me. The orchard will bloom again, I can feel it. There will be apples this autumn and the next and the next. I can pay my debts, keep my land, and I do not want to do any of it alone. Not anymore." "You are asking me to stay," Grelka said slowly, "to make a life here with you." "Yes," Patrick said. "I know I have no right to ask. I know we have only known each other a handful of days. But yes, that is exactly what I am asking." Grelka looked around at the orchard, at the buds forming on every tree, at the land they had just healed together. Then she looked back at Patrick, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I have been alone for so long," she whispered. "I have walked strange roads and slept in cold places and believed I would always be apart, always be other. But here, with you, I feel like I belong. Like I have found something I did not even know I was searching for." "Then stay," Patrick said, taking her hands in his, blood and earth mingling between their palms. "Stay and let us see if this impossible thing between us can grow, like the trees we just healed. Stay and let us be less alone together." Grelka smiled through her tears, fierce and beautiful. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will stay." They sat there in the orchard as the sun moved overhead, holding each other, watching the trees slowly return to life. Patrick knew there would be challenges ahead, knew they would have to be careful, would have to hide the truth of their relationship from the outside world. But for now, in this moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the warmth of Grelka against him, the steady beat of her heart, and the green buds appearing on the branches above them like tiny promises. The next days passed in a strange dreamlike quality. The buds continued to swell, and within a week, the first blossoms began to open. Patrick walked the orchard every morning, marveling at the transformation. 5 years of death, reversed in days. It seemed like a miracle, and in a way it was. Grelka stayed in the house now, sharing Patrick's room without pretense. They were careful to keep her hidden when anyone approached the farm, which was rarely. Patrick's nearest neighbors were miles away, and he had few visitors. But they both understood the need for caution. The world was not ready to accept an orc and a human building a life together. In private, though, they built that life with deliberate care. They cooked together, learning each other's preferences and stories. They worked the land together, Grelka's strength and Patrick's knowledge combining to make tasks easier. They talked long into the nights about everything and nothing, sharing hopes and fears and dreams, and they fell deeper in love. Patrick had not believed it was possible to care for someone so much so quickly. But Grelka was unlike anyone he had ever known. She was fierce and gentle, strong and vulnerable, wise and playful. She challenged him, comforted him, made him laugh, made him think. She fit into his life as though she had always been meant to be there. 10 days after the ritual, the assessor arrived. Patrick's heart sank when he saw the official carriage coming up the road. He had been so caught up in the orchard's recovery and his growing relationship with Grelka that he had almost forgotten about the assessment. Grelka saw his expression and quickly retreated to the house, understanding without being told that she needed to be invisible. Patrick met the assessor at the edge of the orchard, his stomach churning with anxiety. The assessor was a thin, severe man named Thomas Gray, known for his lack of mercy towards struggling farmers. "Mr. Lawson," Gray said, stepping down from the carriage, "I am here to conduct the official assessment of your orchard as mandated by your creditors. I must inform you that if the orchard shows no signs of recovery, foreclosure proceedings will begin immediately." "I understand," Patrick said. "Please, inspect the orchard and judge for yourself." Gray looked skeptical as he walked toward the trees, no doubt expecting to see the same dead branches that had characterized Patrick's orchard for 5 years. Patrick followed, holding his breath. Gray stopped dead when he saw the blossoms. The orchard was in full bloom. Every tree, from the youngest to the oldest, was covered in white and pink flowers that filled the air with sweet fragrance. Bees hummed among the branches, birds sang, and the entire space seemed alive with possibility. "This is impossible," Gray said, walking deeper into the orchard, staring around in disbelief. "Your orchard has been dead for 5 years. How is this possible?" "I found the source of the blight," Patrick said carefully. "I was able to treat the soil. The trees responded quickly." Gray examined tree after tree, checking the health of the wood, the vitality of the blossoms. Patrick watched him, praying that the man would accept the evidence before his eyes. Finally, Gray turned back to Patrick, his expression bewildered. "I do not understand how you accomplished this, Mr. Lawson, but I cannot deny what I see. This orchard is healthy and productive. I will report to your creditors that foreclosure is not warranted at this time. You will be expected to make good on your debts from this season's harvest, but you have earned a reprieve." Patrick felt weak with relief. "Thank you, sir. I will not disappoint." Gray nodded, still looking around the orchard as though he expected it to vanish like an illusion. He returned to his carriage and departed, leaving Patrick alone among his blooming trees. Grelka emerged from the house the moment the carriage was out of sight, running to meet him. Patrick caught her up in his arms, spinning her around. "We did it," he said, laughing. "We actually did it. The orchard is saved." Grelka kissed him soundly, her joy as bright as his own. "I never doubted," she lied, and he laughed again because they both knew it was a lie and they both loved each other anyway. As spring turned to summer, the orchard flourished. The blossoms gave way to small green fruits that swelled and ripened in the warm sun. Patrick tended them with obsessive care, and Grelka used her rootsinging to guide the trees toward their strongest growth. It was going to be an extraordinary harvest. But even as they celebrated the orchard's recovery, they both knew they were living on borrowed time. Eventually, someone would discover Grelka's presence. Eventually, they would face consequences. The moment came in late summer. Patrick had gone to the village to purchase supplies, leaving Grelka alone at the farm. She was working in the vegetable garden, enjoying the sun on her skin, when she heard horses approaching. By the time she realized it was not just one rider but many, it was too late to hide. 6 men rode into the farmyard, all wearing the insignia of the territorial militia. Their leader was a burly man named Marcus Stone, known for his hatred of orcs. He spotted Grelka immediately and drew his sword. "An orc," he spat. "On human land. You are under arrest, Greenskin." Grelka straightened, her heart racing but her voice calm. "I have committed no crime. I am a guest of the landowner." "Patrick Lawson is harboring an orc," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with malice. "That is a crime in itself. Where is he?" "Not here," Grelka said, "and he has done nothing wrong. I came to help with his orchard, nothing more." "Likely story," Marcus sneered. "Orcs do not help humans. You are probably a spy or a thief or worse. You will come with us to stand trial, and if you resist, we are authorized to execute you on the spot." Grelka considered running. She was fast and strong, and the forest was close. But if she ran, they would burn the farmhouse, destroy the orchard, and wait for Patrick to return to arrest or kill him. She could not let that happen. "I will come peacefully," she said, setting down her gardening tools and raising her hands. "But please, leave the farm and the orchard untouched. They are innocent." Marcus rode closer, his sword still drawn. "You do not make demands, Greenskin. Bind her," he ordered his men. They pulled Grelka's arms behind her back and tied her wrists with rough rope. She did not resist, even when they tightened the bonds painfully. She kept her eyes on the orchard, on the trees heavy with ripening apples, on the home she had found and was about to lose. As they were about to lead her away, Patrick came riding up the road. He saw the militia, saw Grelka bound and surrounded, and his face went white. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, dismounting quickly. "Release her immediately." "Patrick Lawson," Marcus said with false friendliness. "We are arresting this orc for trespassing and suspected espionage." "Were you aware there was an orc on your property?" Patrick looked at Grelka, at her steady amber gaze, and made a decision that he knew would change everything. "Yes, I was aware. Grelka is my guest, and more than that, she is my partner. She saved my orchard when it was dying. She has committed no crime." The militia men muttered among themselves. Marcus's expression hardened. "Your partner? You admit to consorting with an orc. That is forbidden, Lawson. It is against natural law and human decency. You are also under arrest." "On what charge?" Patrick demanded. "Collaboration with the enemy, harboring a dangerous non-human perversion of the natural order. Take your pick," Marcus said. "Both of you will come with us to stand trial. And I warn you, the penalties for these crimes are severe." Patrick moved to stand beside Grelka. Then we face them together. Grelka shook her head. No, Patrick, you can still claim I deceived you, that you did not know what I was. You can save yourself. I will not lie, Patrick said firmly, and I will not abandon you. Marcus laughed harshly. How touching! Bind him as well. They tied Patrick's hands and forced both him and Grelka onto horses. As they rode away from the farm, Patrick looked back at the orchard, at the fruits of their labor and their love, and wondered if he would ever see it again. They were taken to the regional garrison, a grim stone fortress that served as both military outpost and prison. Patrick and Grelka were separated immediately, dragged to different cells. Patrick fought against his captors, trying to stay with Grelka, but they overpowered him and threw him into a dark, cold room, slamming the door behind him. He sat in the darkness, his mind racing. They would both be tried, probably convicted. The penalty for harboring an orc could be years in prison or worse. The penalty for an orc on human land was almost certainly death. And if the tribunal learned the full truth of their relationship, if they knew Patrick and Grelka were lovers, the consequences would be even more severe. He had to find a way to save her. Even if it cost him everything, he had to save Grelka. Days passed in the cell. Patrick was given minimal food and water, and no information about when his trial would be or what was happening to Grelka. The uncertainty was torture. He paced his small cell, thinking through every possible argument, every legal precedent, every appeal to mercy he could make. On the fourth day, he was dragged before a tribunal. The chamber was formal and intimidating, with 3 judges seated behind a high bench. Marcus Stone stood to one side, clearly serving as the prosecution. Patrick was forced to kneel in the center of the room. Patrick Lawson, the head judge intoned, a gray-haired woman named Judith Crane. You are charged with harboring a non-human enemy on your property, consorting with said enemy, and collaboration against human interests. How do you plead? Patrick raised his head, meeting the judge's eyes. Not guilty, Your Honor. I committed no crime. Grelka is not an enemy. She is a rootsinger who came to help my dying orchard. Through her efforts, my land was saved. She posed no threat to anyone. An orc on human land is threat enough, Marcus interjected. Their very presence invites more of their kind. They cannot be trusted. Grelka has been living peacefully on my land for months, Patrick said. She harmed no one. She helped me save my orchard, which in turn allows me to pay my debts and contribute to the local economy. How is that a crime? Judge Crane frowned thoughtfully. You admit that you knew she was an orc and allowed her to stay. I do, Patrick said. And I would do it again. She saved my livelihood. More than that, she became my friend, my partner. She is a good person, regardless of her race. The judges conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, Crane spoke again. Mr. Lawson, while we acknowledge that you may have benefited from this orc's presence, the law is clear. Orcs are not permitted on human land without explicit authorization from the territorial government. You should have reported her presence immediately. Your failure to do so constitutes a crime. What is my sentence? Patrick asked, his heart sinking. Normally, such a crime would carry a sentence of 5 years imprisonment, Crane said. However, given the unusual circumstances, and given that you did ultimately benefit the community by restoring your orchard, we are inclined toward leniency. You will serve 6 months in the garrison prison, and you will pay a fine of 100 gold marks. 6 months. Patrick could survive 6 months, but what about Grelka? And what of Grelka? What is her sentence? The judges exchanged glances. The orc will be tried separately. Her case is more complex. Please, Patrick said desperately. She did nothing wrong. She helped me, nothing more. Show her the same mercy you show me. That is not for you to decide, Crane said firmly. Take him back to his cell. Patrick was dragged away, his protests ignored. Back in his cell, he slumped against the wall, despair washing over him. 6 months for him, but Grelka faced death. He had to do something, had to find a way to help her. That night, he heard sounds in the corridor outside his cell. Footsteps, quiet voices, the jingle of keys. He stood and pressed his face to the small barred window in his door. A guard was walking past, leading a cloaked figure. Patrick's heart leaped. It was Grelka, he was certain, but where were they taking her? He waited until they passed, then called out softly. "Grelka, Grelka, is that you?" The figure stopped and turned. The hood fell back, revealing Grelka's face. She looked tired and afraid, but when she saw Patrick, her expression softened. "Patrick," she whispered, "you should not have defended me. You should have saved yourself." "Where are they taking you?" Patrick demanded. The guard yanked on Grelka's chain. "Move along, Greenskin." "You are not allowed to speak to the prisoners." "Please," Grelka said to the guard. "Please, just one moment." The guard hesitated, then sighed. "1 moment, make it quick." Grelka moved closer to Patrick's door. "They are taking me to a holding cell for my trial tomorrow." "Patrick, you must understand they will likely condemn me. An orc on human land, there is no mercy for that, but you still have a chance. Do not throw your life away for me." "I love you," Patrick said fiercely. "I am not giving up on you." Grelka's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." "That is why you must let me go. Save yourself. Live your life. Remember me, but live." "No," Patrick said. "We will find a way. We have to." The guard pulled on Grelka's chain again. "Time is up. Move." Grelka reached through the bars and briefly touched Patrick's hand, then she was pulled away, disappearing down the corridor. Patrick sank to the floor, his mind whirling with desperate plans. He had to act. He had to do something. In the early hours before dawn, Patrick heard his cell door unlock. He looked up to find a hooded figure entering, moving silently. He tensed, ready to fight, but the figure raised a hand in a gesture of peace and lowered their hood. It was a woman, middle-aged, with kind eyes and graying hair. Patrick did not recognize her. "Who are you?" he whispered. "My name is Helena," she said quietly. "I am a healer in the garrison. I have been caring for your orc friend." "Is she well?" "Are they treating her decently, as well as can be expected? But that is not why I am here." Helena knelt beside him. "I heard about your case, about what you did for this orc woman, and I know something the tribunal does not, something that might save her life." Patrick leaned forward urgently. "What? Tell me." "The territorial governor has a daughter who has been ill for months. No healer has been able to help her. The sickness is in her blood, we think, or perhaps in her spirit. But I have heard that rootsingers can sometimes heal such ailments, that they can sense and treat sicknesses that ordinary medicine cannot touch." Understanding dawned on Patrick. If Grelka could heal the governor's daughter, he might grant her clemency, Helena finished, or at least spare her life. It is a chance, perhaps the only one she has. "Why are you telling me this?" Patrick asked. "Why help us?" Helena smiled sadly. "Because I am tired of hatred and division. Because I saw the way you fought for her, and it reminded me that love is more important than fear. And because I have always believed that anyone who can heal should be given the chance to do so, regardless of what race they are." "Can you get me to Grelka, to the governor?" "Can you make this happen?" "I can try," Helena said. "But you must trust me, and you must be willing to risk everything. If this fails, the consequences will be severe for both of you." "I am willing," Patrick said without hesitation. Helena nodded. "Then follow my lead, and pray that the governor loves his daughter more than he hates orcs." She led Patrick out of his cell, moving through the garrison with the confidence of someone who belonged there. No one questioned the healer escorting a prisoner. They made their way to the holding cells where Grelka was being kept. Grelka looked up in shock when they entered. "Patrick, how are you here?" No time to explain, Patrick said, as Helena unlocked Grelka's shackles. We have a chance to save you, but we have to move quickly. He explained Helena's plan as they moved through the fortress toward the governor's private quarters. Grelka listened, her expression shifting from disbelief to desperate hope. If I can heal the daughter, the governor might show mercy, she asked. It is the best chance we have, Patrick said. They reached the governor's chambers and Helena knocked firmly. A guard opened the door, looking suspicious. What is this? I have brought a healer who may be able to help the governor's daughter, Helena said calmly. An unconventional healer, but one with unique skills. The guard looked at Grelka and his hand went to his sword. An orc, are you mad? I am desperate, came a voice from within the room. The governor himself appeared, a tall, dignified man with exhaustion carved into his face. He looked at Grelka with mingled suspicion and hope. You claim you can heal my daughter. I am a rootsinger, Grelka said quietly. I sense sicknesses in living things, including people. I cannot promise I can heal your daughter, Governor, but I can try, if you will allow it. The governor studied her for a long moment. My daughter is dying. Every healer in the territory has tried and failed. If you are lying, if you harm her in any way, I will have you executed slowly. Do you understand? I understand, Grelka said. And I give you my word, I will do everything in my power to help her. The governor nodded and stepped aside. Then come, and may whatever gods you believe in grant you success. They were led to a bedchamber where a young girl, perhaps 13, lay pale and still in a large bed. She was beautiful, or had been before the sickness took her. Now she was little more than skin and bones, her breathing shallow, her skin clammy. Grelka approached the bed slowly, kneeling beside it. She placed her hands gently on the girl's forehead and closed her eyes. The room fell utterly silent as everyone watched. Patrick held his breath. Everything depended on this moment. Grelka's brow furrowed in concentration. Her hands moved from the girl's forehead to her chest, then to her stomach. She was quiet for long minutes, and Patrick could see sweat beading on her skin from the effort of whatever she was doing. Finally, Grelka opened her eyes. I can feel it, she said softly. The sickness. It is like a poison in her blood, but not a physical poison. It is a spiritual rot, a darkness that feeds on her life force. I have encountered such things before in forests where old curses linger. Can you heal it? The governor demanded, his voice shaking. I can try to draw it out to cleanse her spirit the way I cleanse sick soil, but it will take time and great effort, and I cannot guarantee success. Grelka looked up at the governor. I will need complete quiet, and I will need my companion to assist me. He has worked with me before in healing rituals. The governor looked at Patrick, assessing him. Then he nodded. Do whatever you must. Just save my daughter. Grelka had the servants bring clean water, salt, and certain herbs. She prepared a mixture, speaking softly to Patrick as she worked, explaining what she needed him to do. They would perform a variation of the cleansing ritual they had done in the orchard, but focused on the girl's body and spirit instead of the land. As dawn light began to filter through the windows, Grelka began to sing. It was the same deep rhythmic song Patrick remembered from the orchard, but with different words, different intention. She sang of light driving out darkness, of health replacing sickness, of life triumphing over death. Patrick joined his voice to hers, following her lead. Grelka placed her hands on the girl's chest, and Patrick placed his hands over Grelka's, lending her his strength, his will. They sang together, pouring everything they had into the effort. The governor and Helena watched in tense silence. For a long time, nothing seemed to happen. The girl remained still and pale. But slowly, gradually, color began to return to her cheeks. Her breathing deepened, strengthened. Grelka's hands began to glow with a faint green light, and beneath that light, Something dark seemed to seep out of the girl's skin, dissipating like smoke in the dawn air. Grelka's song grew more intense, more urgent. Patrick felt the strain of it, the way it pulled at his own life force, but he did not stop. He thought of his love for Grelka, his hope for their future, and poured it all into the song. The dark smoke grew thicker, then suddenly rushed out in a final wave, disappearing completely. Grelka gasped and collapsed backward. Patrick caught her, supporting her as she sagged against him, exhausted. On the bed, the girl's eyes fluttered open. "Father," she said, her voice weak but clear. The governor rushed to her side, taking her hand, tears streaming down his face. "Ilara." "My daughter, you are awake," Ilara smiled faintly. "I feel better. The darkness is gone." The governor looked at Grelka with wonder and gratitude. "You did it. You saved her." Grelka managed a tired nod. "The sickness is gone. She will need rest and good food, but she should recover fully." The governor stood and faced Grelka and Patrick. "You have given me back my daughter. Anything you ask, if it is in my power, I will grant it." Patrick spoke before he could second-guess himself. "Grant Grelka clemency. Acknowledge that she has done nothing wrong, that she deserves to live freely. And allow us to return to my farm to live our lives in peace." The governor frowned. "You ask me to overturn the law to allow an orc to live on human land. That is no small thing." "You asked what I wanted," Patrick said. "That is what I want. Grelka saved your daughter's life. Does she not deserve the same mercy?" The governor was quiet for a long moment, looking at his daughter, then at Grelka. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. I cannot change the law, but I can issue a special dispensation. Grelka will be granted protected status as a healer working in my territory. She will be allowed to live on your farm without harassment under my personal guarantee of safety. Anyone who harms her will answer to me." Relief flooded through Patrick so intensely he nearly collapsed. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you, Governor." "No," the governor said quietly. "Thank you. Both of you. You have given me back the most precious thing in my life. I will not forget this debt." Helena stepped forward, smiling. "I will draw up the necessary papers immediately. By this afternoon, Grelka's status will be official and legally binding." Grelka looked at Patrick with wonder and joy and disbelief. "We are free," she whispered. "We can go home." Patrick pulled her close, not caring who saw, not caring what anyone thought. "We can go home." By mid-afternoon, all the legal documents were prepared and signed. Patrick's prison sentence was commuted, his fine waived. Grelka was granted her official status as a protected healer. The governor himself walked them to the gates of the garrison, shaking both their hands. "Thank you again," he said. "If you ever need anything, you have my support." They rode back to the farm as the sun was setting, both of them quiet, processing everything that had happened. When they crested the final hill and saw the orchard spread out below them, heavy with ripening apples, Patrick felt emotion well up in his chest. They were home. They were together. They were free. Over the following weeks, word spread of what had happened. Some in the community were outraged that an orc had been granted protected status, but the governor's support and the story of how Grelka had saved his daughter silenced most criticism. A few neighbors even came to the farm to meet Grelka, curious about the orc healer. The apple harvest was extraordinary. The trees produced more fruit than they had in Patrick's grandfather's time, as if making up for the 5 lost years. Patrick and Grelka worked side by side, picking and packing and selling. Patrick paid off all his debts with the first sales, and still had enough left over to improve the farm, to build additions to the house. As autumn deepened and the harvest concluded, Patrick knew it was time. He had been planning this for weeks, working in secret on a special project. He waited until a clear evening when the last of the leaves were falling from the apple trees. He brought Grelka out to the orchard. to the oldest tree at the center, the one where they had performed the cleansing ritual. "What is this about?" Grelka asked, smiling at his mysterious expression. Patrick knelt on one knee and produced a small wooden box. "Grelka, when you first appeared in my orchard, I was a man with nothing to hope for. I was days away from losing everything. But you gave me hope, and then you gave me so much more. You gave me your trust, your courage, your love. You gave me a future." He opened the box, revealing 2 simple rings made of woven apple wood, carved with intricate patterns. "Among my people, we exchange rings when we choose to bind our lives together. I know we come from different worlds. I know there are still those who would condemn what we have. But I do not care. You are my home, Grelka. You are my heart. Will you marry me?" Grelka stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she laughed, bright and joyful. "Yes, yes, Patrick, I will marry you." Patrick slipped one of the rings onto her finger and she slipped the other onto his. Then he stood and they kissed beneath the apple tree as the stars came out above them. They were married a week later in a small ceremony on the farm. Helena came, and the governor and his daughter, and a handful of neighbors who had come to accept Grelka. It was not a grand wedding, but it was full of love. Patrick's friend, who served as the local minister, an old man named Thomas who had known Patrick since childhood, agreed to perform the ceremony. He spoke of love transcending boundaries, of the courage it took to choose hope over fear. He blessed their union and declared them married in the eyes of gods and men. That night, Patrick and Grelka stood in their orchard, now bare of leaves but full of promise for the spring to come. "I never imagined I could be this happy," Grelka said softly. "When I left my clan, I thought I would always be alone. I thought my gift would always separate me from others. But you see my gift, you see all of me, and you love me anyway." "Not anyway," Patrick corrected. "I love you because of who you are, all of who you are. Your gift, your strength, your kindness, all of it." Grelka rested her head on his shoulder. "What will we do, Patrick? What comes next?" "Whatever we choose," Patrick said. "We will tend the orchard, we will live our lives, we will build something good together. And maybe, if we are very fortunate, we will teach the world that love matters more than difference." "That is a worthy goal," Grelka said. Winter came, and with it the quiet dormancy of the orchard. Patrick and Grelka spent the cold months improving their home, reading together by the fire, making plans for the future. They talked about expanding the orchard, about Grelka using her healing skills to help others in the territory, about the possibility of children someday. When spring arrived, the orchard bloomed more beautifully than ever. Patrick and Grelka walked the rows together at dawn, as they had done that first morning when she appeared in his life. The trees were heavy with white and pink flowers, humming with bees, alive with possibility. "It has been a year," Patrick said, stopping beneath the oldest tree. "A year since you first walked these rows." "The best year of my life," Grelka said. "Mine as well," Patrick agreed. He pulled her close, kissing her softly. "Here is to many more." They stood together in the blooming orchard as the sun rose higher, warming the earth, bringing light to the day. Around them, the apple trees that had been dead for 5 years grew strong and healthy, living monuments to the power of perseverance, faith, and love. Patrick had lost everything and then found it all again, transformed and renewed. He had found his orchard, his home, his purpose. And most importantly, he had found Grelka, the orc woman who had appeared at dawn and saved not just his trees, but his heart. Their story was just beginning, but it already had everything that mattered. They had each other, they had their land, they had hope for tomorrow. And in a world that often seemed determined to divide people by race and history and fear, they had built something beautiful together. A love that bloomed like apple blossoms in spring. delicate and strong, unexpected and perfect, and it would last for all the seasons to come.